Hey, Helen here, your host. Great to have you along for the second season of The Beautiful Side of Grief, where we continue to hear from people from all walks of life who have faced or have been involved with heart-wrenching loss and who have come out the other side with so many positives to share with others. I know this may seem like an impossibility for you right here, right now, to be in that space. And believe me, I understand. I lost my own gorgeous 18-year-old daughter and only child in a car accident. Yet, here I am 4 years later, sharing my own journey and those of others in the most heartwarming and joyful way. Each and every one of my guests share their own beautiful insights and their strategies for getting through their grief. And through these stories, I hope you'll find your own way to deal with your grief in whatever form that may take. I'll pop my guest links and any free resources in the episode notes, along with my website address if you'd like to know more about the energy work I do, as that was my lifesaver in my own grief journey. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you can keep informed of each weekly episode. So now let's see who our guest is this week. My guest today is really going to stretch the way we think about how we can heal our own grief. But in this chat, we're also going to look at chronic conditions and addictions, as this can also go hand in hand with grief. Elizabeth Kipp is a chronic pain specialist, yoga-informed addiction recovery coach, ancestral clearing practitioner, and yes, there's more, yoga and meditation teacher, and international best-selling author of The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power. So she is definitely an expert on these subjects and focuses on helping people realize the power of their own inherent healing. So Elizabeth herself has healed from over 40 years of chronic pain, including anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and get this, 32 years of addiction to prescribed opiate and benzodiazepine medication. It's these first-hand experience which make her so successful in helping others, either one-on-one or in group sessions in the modalities that she practices. So I'll put the link to her website, which is elizabeth-kipp.com in the episode notes if you're wanting to check out any further what she does. Now, great to have you listening in today, and I hope the information we share in this episode is going to help you achieve the happiness and wellness you would like in your life. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Elizabeth Kipp. Elizabeth, so wonderful to have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Helen. I'm so grateful and honored to be able to come before your list.
I think the honor is mine, actually. And we're going to unravel it as we go through. So you've got such an interesting journey. So I thought we'd just start by hearing what your own grief story is, and then we'll just start unraveling it from there.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think the most profound, I'll take you through a little journey.
Sure.
I remember the first time I really got hit like a tidal wave with a grief experience was when my grandmother died. I was really close to my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my very early 30s. And I cried for 2 weeks. I couldn't stop. I didn't try to stop. I just let it happen. Right.
Yeah.
And then that was that. And then I had other family members, my mother and my father, my two grandfathers, my other grandmother had passed away before I was born. So I never really knew her. And then I had some other family members that passed away. My husband's mother passed away, and it was close to her. Interestingly, in all those experiences, I never had a chance to actually go to the funeral.
Oh, really?
Just the way it's just the way life was for me at the time, and a lot of it had to do with the chronic pain and the fact that I couldn't travel, and I was laid up in bed. I was laid up in bed in the 80s for like 6 years or something. Surgery. Anyway, but I had a really close friend that passed away in 2016, and it affected me it was the huge tidal wave again of emotion, and I was like, this person wasn't even family, and I didn't know him that long. What's happening here? But I knew something about science. I have a grounding in science and neuroscience and neurophysiology and understanding. This was a discovery that neurons in the brain that wire together, fire together. How does that relate? saying, as we have experiences that are similar to one another, the brain organizes them in a network. And so the grief experience is like its own network in the brain. And what happened to me was when this person passed away, my whole network went off in a big way. I was like, what's happening here? And I didn't understand it until later when I realized I was able to go to his funeral and his service, and that was when I realized, wow, this is the first time I've actually been able, and I was able to get up and say something, speak at the service. It was the first time I'd been able to actually find completion, and I understood my reaction. It was quite interesting.
So that is so interesting, because it's like a compounding effect you're talking about, isn't it? So yes. And so when you finally got to experience what it was like to be able to say goodbye in the way that you wanted to say goodbye, that actually gave you some peace in that. Whereas on all those other times before, due to circumstances, it was just a compounding thing that kept building up with no closure. Am I right in how I've had with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. The other thing that was interesting was that experience was so profound for me. And I do some poetry writing anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to get
it. Writing. I just started writing, and it really helped me to, connect to my heart in a way that I couldn't any other way. It's not like I could have a conversation with the person or anybody else about it. It was something kind of private, but it was so profound. And one of the things I learned, this gentleman that passed away was one of my teachers, and his big lesson was accept what is. And we used to have conversations about that. I'm like, he'd say, how are you doing, Elizabeth? And I'm like, oh, this thing happened, and it's like, it's really, really upsetting me. And he'd say to me, sounds to me like you're not accepting what is. And I say, you're right, I'm not accepting what is. So that's how it went, right? So
that's such a good say. Accept what is. Accept what is.
And so here he was teaching me from the grave to accept what is. And I was like, you turn right, I'm not accepting what is. And so the deep work was, why am I not accepting what is? What's the problem? Why am I having so much resistance? And is there a way that I can find peace with that? So the poetry really helped me resolve that and understand that really what I was feeling was love. Yes. And how profound and vast that love to the heart really is. I mean, it's kind of an organ that the scientists look at it and say, well, it's as big as my fist. There's an infinite field in there, man.
Yeah, definitely. How do you think you attract somebody from the other side of the room? That's all the energy that's getting sent out from your heart, and it's attracting another person. So believe in what that you're saying there. And I can understand how poetry is so healing and so transformative, because that's what I use with my own girl. Because I think when you're writing it down, you have to kind of make sense of it. So you can't just write, or you can just write. But if you're writing, then you actually really have to think and process and make sense of what it is you're feeling. And I think that in itself, just that process in itself is really, really powerful.
I agree. And I also think there's something about writing that helps me get in touch with the language of the heart. Which is not, I can logic all day long. I have the science background, and I can, I've got all that going on. It's not the same as the language of the heart. It's a completely different vibration. And we have the heart leading the head, not the other way around, right?
Well, they say that's our primary brain, that we feel before we actually process what we're feeling. So it's our heart that feels first. Yeah.
I just think poetry gives us access to the language of the heart.
Mm. Well said. Well said. So I talked briefly in the intro about your, long struggle with addiction to opiates. And what was it? What was a turning point for you that changed your life from one of addiction to one of healing?
Oh, I actually interesting. We're talking about the heart. My son, Maston Kipp, was really crucial in this. He had a website called The Daily Love for years, and I was the editor on that. And he was about 50% of his followers were in recovery from something. He's in recovery. It's very public about that. And I said to him one day, I said, this medication is not working. It's making me sicker. I came down off the dosage about 75% of the way, and I couldn't get any further. And I said, I need help. And he knew a counselor who knew Dr. Peter Prescott at the Betty Ford Center, who was a chronic pain management program. He was the head of that. And I went into that program, and he had detoxed thousands of patients off of, I was on fentanyl, I've been on fentanyl for 15 years. He had detoxed thousands of people off of fentanyl. And this combination of an opiate and a benzo is pretty tricky. And he knew how to do that. Also, I don't talk about this very often, but I had a number of surgeries on my back, which was kind of with the chronic, a lot of what the chronic cancer, where the opiates were there. And then in detox. So I had 2 near-death experiences in surgery. And then I had another one. My heart stopped during the detox, which I don't want to scare anybody from going into treatment. It's not about that. I was in a chemical dependency hospital. They knew to look for stuff like that. They had me right there. But those experiences were profound.
Wow. So were you able to share in a little bit more depth? Because I know that these types of stories and experiences fascinate people. So what was it like for you? What were those near-death experiences?
Yeah, I don't talk about it too much because I don't want to be known as the person that had this experience. That's not my first foot forward. However, in this context, I will share it. So special. So
thank you.
All 3 of them were the same, which I thought was amazing. Where I was, I was here and then I wasn't. I was in this place that was kind of dark, and there was this being, looked sort of amorphous. It was kind of had a head and a body, but an amorphous kind of being that I had this mental conversation with. And behind this being was a whole group of people kind of behind him and in this kind of tunnely place with kind of a yellowy white light and kind of white bluish yellow light. This kind of the lighting in all this darkness. And here's the thing. I couldn't see anybody's faces, but I recognized every one of them.
Wow.
So that was interesting. I mean, my science was still working, even though I'm at space. I'm having this experience and still watching myself have it. It was pretty cool. And then the other thing, which was profound, there were 2 more things that happened. What I said to this being, which I kind of felt was a he, but it may not have been. I said, I haven't completed my mission. I have to go back.
So you actually said that, because normally I hear quite often it's the other way around. No, you need to go back because there's still work for you to be doing.
Yeah. I just brought that forward. And as soon as I said that, the other thing that I remember, and then I went back, I felt the love. The love on that end of things was completely indescribable and almost overwhelming. Like not overwhelming, but almost. Like it was, and it's nothing like I had experienced here. And to experience that once in a lifetime has been life-changing. To experience it 3 times was, phenomenally extraordinary. So
why do you suppose you had multiple experiences? I mean, one would have been enough, but do you think there was anything behind in the messages or the conversation that you were having that that you were still needing to move forward in a different way?
Well, it certainly has affected any time that I have any question about my mission on the planet. That shores it up. That's for
correct
bedrock that helps, provide lift for me and momentum. That's part of it. And I don't have this fear of death like I used to. And of course, I'm a yoga. I teach yoga. I have a yoga practice. I study yoga. And from that point of view, we're we're souls in a human body having a human experience. And when we die, we drop the body and we move on. So it's a transformation. It's a transformational kind of thing. It's not the end, right? It's not.
Yes.
And that was also through my experiences. That was like, well, yeah, of course it's not the end. It was so obvious. And it landed. The other thing was, remember, science. Going on, right? The other thing that was interesting about those experiences, they landed inside of me as truths, which is kind of interesting. It's like, I didn't doubt it. And boy, you come to me with information, and the first thing I'm going to do is try and figure out when it doesn't work, when it doesn't apply. Right? That's just the way I'm kind of trained. So this was very interesting to me. It landed as truth each time. And yeah, powerful.
Such a good perspective to have, that scientific mind, analyzing it, because that makes it even more powerful. Because if you can get over that logical thinking brain and just accept this experience for what it is, then that helps you just go to a completely different place, I suppose. Now, you talked about being bedridden for quite some time, and now, obviously you're doing yoga. So that's a huge shift. And I want to talk about, without discrediting the role of the health systems in any way, you talk about that we all have the tools within ourselves to heal ourselves. And that's a huge statement. And what I agree with, like 100% I agree with, because I've experienced that firsthand. But there are a lot of people out there that do not understand that we actually have so much power within to heal. So can you explain what these tools are for a start? And how does somebody start to tap into this for themselves?
Thank you for the questions. I think the way I'll say it is, doctors can set a bone, they can stitch up a wound, they can give you an antibiotic, but they can't tell the body how to heal. Mm-hmm. So understanding that fundamental piece is, well, okay, if they can't tell the body how to heal, where's the healing coming from? So that's called infinite intelligence in every cell, right? The other thing that's interesting to me is that if you took 3 patients that had exactly my x-rays, which are kind of intense, that I've got dislocated vertebrae in my spine. Anyway, ouch. One person would have pain all the time. One person would have pain only when they're stressed. And one person would not have pain at all. And I all 3 of those, by the way. Now, the thing is that Western medicine doesn't really understand how that can happen. And I can explain why I think that happens, because they're just looking at it for the reductionist model. They're just looking at the physical. But we're whole beings. We have to look at the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects. The person is a whole person. And when I went to see Dr. Prescott in this pain management group, he was the first one that looked at me. He didn't want to see my x-rays or any of my reports. He said, I want to know who you are. He wasn't interested in any of that. He was just interested in who I was and what my story was and where my beliefs were. And so the tools, we use Qigong. Yoga's also good. They're both really helpful, and I use both. We used Ancestral Clearing, which is a really important piece. I'm an Ancestral Clearing Practitioner now because that is so powerful. We come into this life with the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors, and part of the burden that we carry around, certainly me, and around chronic pain, happened to be the burden that I was carrying from my lineage. So yes, part of healing was to clear that. Now, the other thing was, Dr. Peter asked us, he said, what are you doing to contribute to your pain? And I know my first reaction was like, what are you talking about? I'm not doing anything. It's doing it to me. But, after I sat and listened for a little bit, I realized my goodness, he said, then the next thing he said was, don't judge the moment. And I'm like, I'm not judging anything, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I've been judging my pain my whole life as bad. Remember I said, accept what is?
Yes.
Never accepted that my pain was. I always wanted it to go away. And that just brings more of it. You know, what we resist persists is kind of a thing. But it's actually true in this case. And in chronic pain, it can make the experience bigger. So don't judge the moment. You know, I accept that I have this experience. I'm having this experience. That right there, if you can find that space, is a way to calm the pain.
So how do you explain that to people who are in the midst of such intense pain and they're going, I just don't get what you're trying to get me to do. You know, don't judge this pain. And what am I doing to contribute to it? And look, you know, I didn't ask for this. And so it's a very hard concept to get your head around, isn't it? To just say, okay, is it kind of like just sitting with it and just saying, okay,
well,
this is it. This is how I'm feeling.
Yes. And when we're in that much pain, the nervous system is just dysregulated.
Yes.
So we really have to bring practices that help to calm the nervous system and bring it back into regulation. So that's the trauma training that I have, is to kind of understand how to, using Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, learning how to help people co-regulate with people and regulate. You and I are co-regulating right now, because having a conversation now, the listener doesn't realize it, but we're seeing each other. And just that looking in our faces helps us to regulate with one another, the nervous system. We're determining if we're safe for each other. That's part of the job of the vagus nerve. The other part is it's really a threat assessment system. And in chronic pain, it gets dysregulated. It goes hypervigilant. And so the first thing I do with people is teach them, well, after an ancestral clearing, I teach them how to breathe.
Yes.
So it calms the nervous system. And the simplest one is to cover your right nostril and breathe in the left nostril, nice, long, even inhales to exhales, 3 minutes, and see how that affects your nervous system. It'll really calm the nervous system down. And so I bring in that as a beginning space. And then we have a conversation. The problem with chronic pain, as you could tell from how I was when I was first listening to this doctor, was I was in total victim mode. It's doing it to me. And when he asked that question, what are you doing that's contributing to your pain? That was a very empowering question, because he suddenly said, now you have power over that situation. I never realized I did. So that's really huge. We have to understand that we actually have power to change our experience.
Oh, I so love this. And I like what you say also, because it's all wrapped in together, like us connecting with each other and seeing each other and feeling safe. And so we're trusting each other. So we're trusting that we can explore this further, and that is so key to everything, isn't it? So when you're sitting in that room, listening to all of that, you know, there's a degree of you feeling safe, that you can trust the process, and that you can actually let go of some of those beliefs that you have, and able to move to that next step. So, yeah. So let's have a look at what is trauma-informed healing.
Great question. So Dr. Stephen Porges has this beautiful theory, the polyvagal theory, where he looks at the nervous system, the vagus nerve within the nervous system, and sees it as that's kind of where the trauma goes when we're in a traumatic experience. Now, it's not so much the experience we have, but what we do with that experience, and the meaning that we make of it. So I'm trying to give you I've got one came right to mind. So I've shared this before. My mom was an alcoholic, and she took antibiotics one day and did the drinking, and she went psychotic, and she tried to She tried to kill me. And so she did, obviously she didn't, but it was pretty, obviously trauma. So here's the thing. I survived that experience, but the trauma was the meaning I made of that. And the meaning I made of that was not, oh, she was an alcoholic that had, a psychotic episode. I didn't say that because I was young. I was just a young teenager. I said, if my own mother wants to take me out, I must really be a horrible person. So I got locked in my body, and I never knew what to do with that. I carried that for a long time until I finally met Dr. Peter. And my family kind of denied that the whole thing happened. So I began to wonder if it ever happened at all. I thought I was crazy. And so that kind of happened. But I carried that event until I met Dr. Peter Prescott, and we worked on it outside his pain track and it privately after I got out of treatment. And
can I ask what age you were when this happened to you?
I was 15. Yeah, I was 15.
Well, I'm so sorry. Look, I tell you, I'm feeling you. I can feel that whole event and that trauma. So I'm loving that we're going down this pathway, because I think this is going to help so many people.
So the thing is that here's the question. I had surgery on my back and it didn't improve my pain. And so they just did another surgery. Here's the question they never asked. Why isn't Elizabeth healing?
Yes.
Never asked that question. They just assumed I wouldn't. Now, I'm not dissing the doctors because that's their training. But the science, this is the value of having some science, some grounding in science, is being able to see these things. Healing happens everywhere in the world, in all it is. Where healing happens in the all is. Remember, body, mind, spirit, one thing, union. Science only can comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe. It only can comment on that part of the universe. But we live in the whole universe. So it's very important to kind of understand the perspective of the healer that you're sitting in front of. And every healer that I sit in front of has a different perspective, and they have a limitation because of that perspective. And I see, and I accept it. I accept that, then I understand, but it doesn't limit me and my ability to heal. It just gives me, there's this perspective to consider. Yeah. And so my thing has been open to the intelligence with a big I that lives in every cell in the body, that lives all around us, that we're all connected to at all times. So that's the boss doctor of all doctors.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, all right? So I know, look, and I understand what you're saying, because I grew up being a really super hypersensitive child, repressing emotions, trying to please others, living in a state of constant and perpetual stress and anxiety, always trying to please them, not quite getting there. And so what I did was I set my body into a tailspin, and at 20, I had chronic fatigue. And at 30, I had, severe Crohn's. Now I'm living today, pretty much without any remnants of those conditions, those chronic conditions. Once I understood what you were saying, that we have it within us. Yeah.
That's a transformation that you went through. Extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and this is why I think it's so important to share with people that they do not need to be a prisoner of living with pain or chronic illnesses or whatever it is, whether it's grief. It doesn't matter what it is. They don't have to be living with that. Now, I also want to bring into this, and feel free to move into this if there's anything else you want to add to the trauma healing, just throw it in there. But I also want to bring into this ancestral healing as well, because I feel we're coming into a consciousness where we're starting to really understand that, what's impacted us today has been brought through hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, through our DNA and that. And a lot of people are not even aware of that. They know that they react, but not necessarily why they react. So take us down that journey.
Oh, yes. I love the practice. It's the ancestral clearing practice that I do was pioneered by Howard Wills and then was further developed by John Newton of helpmeonbelief.com, who registered and trademarked the process. It's got 5 techniques, and I can share with you one of them. But again, it's based on the premise that we come into this life with the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors. And it's really experience. We're accessing presence, where the field of pure consciousness lives and where the healing field is. We can't heal in the past or the future, but we can heal in the present moment. Also, because we're using the present moment, we're sitting in the quantum field, and quantum physics has told us that when we sit in the present moment in the quantum field, we have access to past, present, and future. So that when we do ancestral clearing, we're clearing the whole lineage. We're not just clearing this moment. We're clearing the whole lineage, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
we call on the source of the boss of the boss, the healer of all healers. We call on that to help us. And we ask to forgive for all the hurts and wrongs. And then we bring in humility and gratitude. And I'll run just a small offering now so your listeners could get an idea.
Yes, please.
Just notice, just relax the breath and put your mind just on what sensation you're feeling in the body. And just listen as I say this. Creator of all that is, whatever you are and all that you are, we ask for us and all of our ancestors, everyone listening to this and the replay, for all hurts and wrongs ever done to us in thought, word, or deed. Any hurts and wrongs we did to others in thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly, and any hurts and wrongs we did to ourselves. Please help us all to forgive each other, forgive ourselves, find peace with one another, and find peace with ourselves. Please and thank you. For any time anyone in the lineage was abandoned, not supported, loved and nurtured the way they needed, times they weren't able to support others, abandoned others, or weren't able to love others the way they needed, and times they weren't able to love themselves. Please help them all to forgive each other, help them all forgive themselves for everything that happened, no matter what it was. Please and thank you. Now just take a breath in and let it out. And just notice how that feels in the body.
I could feel that. I could feel that really, really strongly. Like, people can't see me at the moment, but I'm actually feeling really emotional. Like, I've got tears in my eyes and I could feel that. And
we say that when the tears come, we say that's old hurt coming out. And that was just a 5-sentence. we do, I do 50-minute sessions with people, and we go deeper and we kind of look at, because it's in the present moment. So whatever the client is bringing in that's coming up for them is specific to their lineage and their experience. And that's what I do. So it's a very powerful process. And we have so much intergenerational trauma. I worked with occasionally I work with an actual survivor of the Holocaust, but mostly I work with their descendants. And I work with descendants of the Civil War. I work with some descendants of slave owners. I've worked with a gentleman that was born in the Japanese internment and all the trauma there. So it's kind of intense, but that they're carrying all this stuff. But once we don't carry that anymore, when we can release that energy out, we're lighter. It's like we came into this life with glasses on, and they got blurred because of the burden that we carry. And when we do ancestral clearing, we clear the glasses so we can actually see through them and see what our life purpose really is.
Such a good analogy. I actually have lived in Israel on several occasions. And it's funny because coming from New Zealand, there's nothing really, and we've had no real wars or anything, that I've had to experience, or my ancestors so much. However, when I was over there, they had the Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I don't know why, But that just upset me so much. And I didn't even have any relatives that were connected to me, but I could feel it, and I really strongly. And yeah, it's almost like I've been destined to be on this journey to find my way through different experiences to be where I am, because I also do energy work and emotional body code healing. So when I'm talking to you, this is just actually broadening all of that and filling in so many gaps. So thank you.
So we say prayer, we say, just one moment, we say in the prayer, all our ancestors and their relations. And so we're really spanning out, and it could be, and it's likely that you have maybe not your ancestors, but their relations may have had a connection, direct connection into the Holocaust, and that's what you're carrying.
Yeah, I know, because there's certain things that just really affect me about them, fascinate me about that. And it's almost like a knowing, wanting to know more without understanding why. And
there's this a chord, a string that's getting strummed in your nervous system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so good to know. This is great. I don't know about our listeners, but I'm really getting so much out of this. So for me, for people wanting to move forward into a life of well-being, what are some of the top 3 to 5 things that you can recommend for them?
Well, we have actually the 12 steps of wellness that are very simple, short, and I'll share with them.
Oh, lovely.
1, none of us were born to suffer. 2, we all have the ability to heal. 3, love with all your heart. 4, get real about your healing. 5, commit to your healing. 6, do the work it takes to heal. 7, do the work every day. 8, get real about your healing, in case you didn't hear us the first time. 9, never let anyone or anything get in the way of your healing. 10, love yourself fiercely and without reservation. 11, accept what is. 12, be grateful for all that comes your way, and more will be revealed.
Oh, gratitude, the power of gratitude. That's turned my life around. Seriously, every single day, I just live in gratitude. For me, that's been so transformative. So there's one thing in there, do the work every day. What does that look like?
Well, for a chronic pain sufferer who's in recovery, that means meditation to help quiet the mind. So I sit in meditation, silent meditation, 20 minutes twice a day. Not negotiable. I have a movement practice that I do, Qigong or yoga, that helps to kind of move energy in a constructive, healthy way. I also have a treadmill, so I do that too. I make sure that I'm in community, and I'm very careful about what I'm believing, right? I've stopped judging the moment. I'm in the moment, and I'm not perfect at it. I'm a human like anyone else. But when I start feeling resistance and tightness in the body, I know something's up. So okay, yeah. I do the breathing, right? I do that nice, long, deep breathing and allow myself to ground again. And when I get quiet with that breath work, I can see what it is I'm resisting. So and still, because my nervous system is still, the old pattern will rise up inside of me from time to time. I can be just leaving for the day, leaving in my car just to go to the grocery store, which is certainly not a threatening situation for me. Mm. And all of a sudden my nervous system will be just like tense. And I'm like, what's happening? Well, it doesn't really matter what's happening. What matters is I notice and I stop and I breathe and the body relaxes.
Oh, that's beautiful. So what would you recommend for somebody who's listening now and they're going, okay, well, you've just given us all those 12 steps in that, but here I am. I'm in, deep grief, or I'm in deep pain, or I'm in another deep place that is not working well for me. The first baby steps somebody can take, is it finding that center or that person that can step them through all of this?
Well, I feel like the breath is right here with us all the time. We really need to leverage that too, because the mind follows the body. So if we calm the body, the mind will calm too. So first we have to go there.
So just recap for our listeners
Yes.
what that exercise
3 minutes. Just close off the right nostril and breathe through the left nostril 3 minutes. Inhale, slow, deep inhale. Don't push on the breath. Just inhale and exhale slowly, making the inhale and the exhale even in length and duration, nice and slow. Take your time and you'll feel the body calm down. So the first thing is really just take ownership of your own body. You've got power. So, and then the second thing is you really ought to reach out to somebody who knows the way, someone who understands that deep place. And there are therapists out there. There are some chronic pain doctors, depending on where you are on the planet. There are trauma specialists. If you have chronic pain, it's usually unresolved trauma in the system. That's helpful. I wrote a book called The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power, which kind of lays out my program that I did. And the tools are in there. But really, it's like, what meaning are you making of your moment? Like, yes, I'm in pain. And therefore what? Right? Therefore, I'm a bad person. Therefore, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. Therefore, this next moment might be worse than this one, or therefore, pain is part of healing. Now, those are completely different viewpoints. Pain is part of healing is very neutral, right? Pain is going to be here for the rest of my life. That's a very powerful prayer you just put out. Our words are prayers, and that's a very prayer you just put out there. So, what are we saying about our situation? We really need to get a handle on that.
Yeah. And I'm a great believer also that you were guided to the people. Once you start allowing yourself to have awareness and open up and be committed to wanting to have a different lifestyle, then people start to come into your life and they say things and then you connect. So I think also it's about trusting that as well, isn't it? So, yeah.
The healer of all healers is everywhere, all at once, within and without. And we just have to, we have to be aware that it's working in our favor. It's not.
So it's our belief systems and how we're thinking about it that is blocking us.
We have to believe more in the power of healing than in the power of the disease to take us down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Really huge piece. I'm sure that was part of your experience in healing from the Crohn's and whatever the other one was.
Yeah. Chronic fatigue and also the loss of my daughter, like my only child. And when we were just the best friends, and then done, finished, and my whole life changed. And for me, it was like I was always probably heading towards that journey, but that was for me my turning point. And that's when I realized just to accept what is, because you can't change, and that there was a bigger picture to this. And once I allowed that to happen, what I've now allowed into my life is unbelievable and beyond my imagination. Seriously.
There's a beautiful teaching in the yogic world that goes right with what you're saying. We're multidimensional beings living in a multidimensional world, and we're putting out information on multidimensional levels, and we're taking it in on multidimensional levels, but the mind can only track some of that. And so our perspective, because you're speaking to that directly, right? We could only access some of that with the mind. This is why the heart information, listening to the heart and that heart math and that whole situation, that all this heart work is so important, because there's a lot of information that comes through there that we can't access with the mind. And just understanding that I don't understand why this is happening to me right now, that's because I'm like a pilot in a plane on the runway, and I have to ask the control tower, what's up? Because they've got a different perspective, right? I don't have that perspective, but the healer of all healers has that perspective. So I ask that energy, show me the way, guide me through this, because I can't see.
Sometimes it's just about trust as well, trusting the process, trusting where you're being led, instead of us, like you say, with our small ability to block and interfere with all of that, just let it go and just allow ourselves to be open and be guided by that. Yeah, that's really, really beautiful stuff that you're sharing with us. And honestly, I know I could just keep on talking to you for hours, but you mentioned something about heart math, and I know that is a brilliant website for anybody to go on to and understand more about how this heart of ours works. It is such a fascinating journey to go and look at that website and see all the evidence they've got there to prove what they're saying. But, it will blow your mind if you've never looked into this stuff before. So that's a good place.
And to learn the heart math method and dig into that will improve the quality of your life, because it'll get tuned into the resonance of the heart, and you'll improve. It's pretty amazing what they've found. And how blessed are we to be living at this time? Yes. We discovered, right?
Yes. I mean, sometimes it feels chaotic, but on the other hand, I think, just the awareness and acceptance we have of things that we couldn't even really probably talk about, even 20 years ago. Now they're just everyday stuff that we can just go and explore and be a part of. So let's finish off with a couple of questions. So what either today or in this past week, over the weekend or whatever, is the best thing that you've experienced?
In the last day or so?
Yeah, last week. What's something that's really special that's happened to you that's just blowing you out of the water?
I don't want to create too much dead space.
Oh God, I can edit that out, no problem.
Kind of it. First of all, being able to be on this podcast was huge for me, because I haven't had an opportunity to speak about my grief experience before, and so many people have them, and they're my most popular posts on Facebook is when I address that. So I just think it's really sweet to be able to come into. Another thing that happened to me was I was asked by someone to co-write a piece of work that I was so surprised and humbled. The invitations, and that was kind of fun.
Oh, and it's those things, just thinking back on them. And for me, having you on this show is feeling something that I need within me, because I'm a little bit selfish here. And that I do try and cast the net far and wide, because I have my own grief experience. But what fascinates me is everybody else's. And I feel that depending on the perspective we come from, we need to have so much out there so that the person who's going through grief right now and doesn't have a way forward or feels really stuck in it, can find that one episode that speaks to them and just give them that glimmer of hope. So this is what I do. And it's a pleasure to have you on. When you're having a bad day or a bad moment, rather than a day, a bad moment, because let's not write up the whole day. How do you pivot from that? Is it, again, your breath work, or what do you do?
I love that. I would say take a sacred pause, right? I first notice, I'm having a moment here, right? And so that's awareness is number one. And then the second is pause and breathe. And, you could take 6 or 7 nice, long, deep breaths and just allowing yourself to ground again. So most of the little parts of us in the lung that take in oxygen and let go of toxins are in the base of the lung. And we actually, if you took the lung and you spread it out over the surface area flat, it would be the size of a tennis court. So, but most of the things that bring in the air and let go of the toxins, they're at the base of the lung. What happens during the day is we shallow breathe. And so we get a buildup of carbon dioxide and other toxins in the base of the lung, and we're not oxygenating our cells. And we get brain fog and we don't feel well, and we wonder what happened. And it's because we're shallow breathing. So I'm really, and it's because, when I am having a bad moment, that's because I've been shallow breathing. So that, just 6 or 7 or 8 breaths, nice big breaths, long, deep breaths will refresh the system. You'll feel completely different.
That's a good insight. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Okay, let's get on to your 3 takeaways that you can leave with our listeners.
So this is about my grief experience, and I'll share that part with you. I say grief is love. It's wild, unpredictable, and courses through at its own velocity. I've learned to respect and bow to its power. Its power is simple because at its essence, it's love. Second, it takes time to readjust. Please have patience and compassion with yourself as you find your way. The path is yours and defined only by one step at a time, however tremulous that might be for you. And 3, in the end, grief isn't so much a struggle as it is a profound exaltation of our capacity of love for love. We do not get over grief. We are fundamentally transformed by it. There you go.
That is very beautiful, very powerful. And I'd love to share that. I'd love to share that with our listeners as a resource if you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. Please do. Yes, please do. That was kind of the whole point of share with each other, right? To share with everyone shares everybody's stuff. We all have 44 terabytes of information in the brain, and the idea is to share.
I'm never a gatekeeper of information. If I learn something and I can pass it on, I believe that, that's what I was given that information for, was to share it, pass it on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Elizabeth, what an absolute pleasure to connect with you, to be with you, to hear, your insights, because they're valuable also because you have that scientific, logical brain. So I know that these just haven't come to you willy-nilly, that you've really thought long and hard about them and how they've impacted your own life and how they've influenced your own journey. So I'm very grateful that you've taken the time to share these with our listeners.
Well, thank you so much. I couldn't be happier to know that you have a platform like yours is around. And I put a post up yesterday on Facebook and said, "Wow, you guys, I get to do this podcast tomorrow. I'm so excited." And a lot of people, and I put the link to your podcast, and a lot of people just went right to the podcast and listened.
Beautiful.
Just had with whoever it was. So, and they were all very excited about. So it's kind of it's a very sweet topic. It's a really important topic. And the other thing is people don't talk about it very much.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we have this conversation. And I love that you're bringing it forward for everyone to listen to.
I'm going to share this with everybody, with our listeners and that, because every time I finish up an interview with somebody, I am left so high. I just have this most amazing energy, a beautiful feeling, and I just feel grateful that those people have trusted me to share this. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
This has been fantastic for me. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to share it with others. Hit the subscribe or like button so you can be notified of each weekly episode. Also, let me know how I'm doing, especially if there's more you'd like to know that perhaps we didn't get time to touch on today or in past episodes. And if you're after resources to help you out on this journey, or more about the energy healing work I do, hit the Healing to Be You link. That's the word healing, 2, letter B, letter U.com. So until next time, be kind to you and thank you for joining us on the beautiful side of grief.